Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room. Our channel covers issues around Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, the wide world. And when we speak of the wide world, we're including Tulip Street out in Saanich, which is the home base of the Croatian sensation, John Jurisic, my co-host. And John, such a busy time and lots of stuff to chat about and a few things to be very irritated about.
All right, Robin, all right. The court, all of the Victoria Rumble Room is now in session. Yes. About every 10 minutes, something irritating is going on. Let's talk about something that happened, that's been happening now for quite a while. The recent behavior of these old growth forest protesters. It's confusing. Their blockades against logging at Story Creek forced the province to blink. Thus, a moratorium on old growth logging has been put in place for the next 2 years. Not bad. First Nations are now being consulted. Not bad. Seems like objectives are being met. You think the protesters would be happy? No! They're blocking roads and jamming up traffic across the province regularly. That's irritating.
And it's just not something that people are going to, I think, stand for, John. And we have a case in point here that's just happened recently at Douglas and Burnside in Victoria. It was the southbound lane, cars going for quite some distance, blockaded, trying to get to work. And this went on for 3 hours as a handful of activists, 6 of them, were blocking the southbound lanes. They're a self-described splinter group called Save Old Growth. And they say they're doing this to hold the government to account. Their spokesperson, a guy named Brent Eichler, says the time for discussion and petitions is over. He says there are plans to increase this action multiple times over the week until old growth logging is stopped. Well, imagine how this is upsetting people who would normally, of course, be really, I think, very sympathetic. They've done lots of polling that shows British Columbians, for the most part, would like to see more preservation of our old growth, but they don't like being treated this way. And, you have a delay of travelers. 7 arrests finally take place after 3 hours. It took 3 hours for 7 arrests, 2 more in Nanaimo, a couple more in Vancouver. Yes, people are having peaceful protests in other places. Peaceful protests should be respected. It's part of a democracy, but not breaking the law. Anarchy cannot be tolerated.
Well said, Robin. Apparently, the BC government has asked for input from 200 First Nations in old growth areas. 161 of them have responded saying they need more time to make meaningful input.
And that's reasonable.
All right, they've been here for thousands of years. There's a reason we call them the First Nations. They deserve the time they need, and the protesters should respect the process. Here's what one angry, here we go. We have a warning for all the kids watching the show. Here's what one angry Pachidat band member had to say to these protesters.
So you want to be a fucking ally, stand up when you fucking need to. This is bullshit because people's lives are more fucking important than a tree. So I have no use for any of you fuckers because there's more people, my people are gone missing because of you fuckers do saying that it's for us. So fuck you, and you. And I hope the fuck you guys suffer what we go through because of your fucking bullshit.
And John, this chap was just walking along the street. He's a Pachidat band member. He walked up to the protesters. He spoke his mind. And, again, protesting can be really effective. And it has made a difference. It shifts the dialogue.
Yes.
And I think we are moving towards a greener agenda, but extremism just doesn't help. And most protesters, I think, actually get this, but not all of them. And they should be listening. And, it's just crazy, John. Let's move on to something else.
I think we have to, because my brain's going to blow up. It's just like too much stuff, too much frustration, too much irritation. Okay, how about a favorite topic of mine, Robin? Real estate. Right. I was a registered real estate realtor years ago. I've worked with developers. BC assessments are in and out of our property values have skyrocketed. I mean,
we just got our assessments. We just got our assessments in the mail, and we're all making so much money and just sitting around doing nothing for it.
Over this past year, Robin, okay, just this past year, we've seen increases on the island go up 35%. Properties have risen. Property values on the island have risen from 260 billion to 343 billion. Good news in terms of our equity. Don't yet want to talk about what that says for our taxes, but it certainly makes it harder and harder for young people to get into the housing market. My kids, your kids, our viewers' kids. There's constant demand for more housing. We have a beautiful area that we live in. The snow has come and gone. People want to live here, but there's not enough inventory. There's not enough housing being built. So what needs to happen to slow this trend? That's a $1 billion question, Ron.
We just happen to have the mayor of Saanich standing by to answer that question, John.
Exactly. Look, of course, we can't pay him $1 billion. We don't have enough sponsorship yet. But
no, and apparently he won't even get it if he gets fired. He doesn't get any kind of a buyout where he gets
right on.
There's nothing in it for that job. But Mayor Fred Haynes is now to join us. He's going to talk about housing amongst a lot of other issues. And, there's so many things to talk about. Housing, of course, huge right now. Street safety is a big one right now in Saanich because of a recent accident. So lots to talk to Fred Haynes about. Let's zoom him in.
And now joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room for the first time in 2022 is Fred Haynes, the mayor of the district of Saanich. I am a resident of Saanich. Hallelujah. Happy New Year. Great to have you here.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Robin. I'm delighted to be here. Happy New Year. And let's get ready to rumble.
Right on. Okay, well then let's get right into the tough issues. Let's give it to you. I got you in the corner, Fred. Our whole region was terribly upset when a young man was killed on Cedar Hill Crossroad. This was about a week ago. A 16-year-old was crossing the street on a marked crosswalk. He was hit by a driver only 100 feet from his home. I don't have to go into too many details. Nonetheless, a terrible, terrible tragedy. There have been renewed calls for more road safety, sidewalks, safe crossings. I know you spoke to council, laid out your priorities for this coming year, and council passed new measures for road safety. Can you please explain what Vision Zero is?
So Vision Zero is the ideal that we can design our roads, design our enforcement, design all aspects of road safety, how all road users use the road, cars, pedestrians, cyclists, but also the infrastructure of the roads, so that we can arrive at a place where there will be no deaths or injury through infrastructure. And let me just say, it was the saddest day of my term as office when Cadence was taken that way, a beautiful young boy, and it was a very sad day. Thank you. Yeah.
So, Fred, it's great to have you on the show, and we do have a lot of areas to cover, and road safety is one. It's important, and I'm glad it is being addressed by your council. Another, of course, is something that the whole region is dealing with. I know Saanich is talking about it because we're all talking about it. And that are the new assessments that have arrived, and the way that our housing is going sky high, and it never seems to have an end. And we don't know where it's going. We don't know what's going to cause anything to level it off, even, let alone bring some of the prices down. It's getting harder and harder for our young people to live in this region. I know Saanich has a 10-year housing plan. Do you think it could make a difference?
Yes, here's why. You probably know I campaigned on housing in 2018. We created a mayor's task force to look at options for housing. It was a collective of 30 plus of the brightest people in affordable housing, rental housing, community associations, nonprofits, and developers. And they've come up with inputs into the housing strategy. 95% of the housing will be along the corridor centers and villages. That's where we hope to pivot. That's coming back to council shortly. But the answer, Robin, the short answer is supply. We do not have enough supply. We know from our housing needs assessment, a thing that was mandated by the province, that we need 600 units a year. And we've been underperforming on that for some time. So the answer is supply. Another part of this is our own administrative processes. Yes. We spent a 2-year period getting our council meetings to be more efficient. We changed the approach of using the committee of the whole to get public hearings more quickly to council. We have something like 70 applications in, and we just asked staff to give us a triage of those, of how they're sitting, when do we expect them to come forward, and how many large housing applications do we have. I'll share something with you that I hope to do this year, which is to get Saanich to work with the Capital Regional District. The Capital Regional District has 22 lands in Saanich, which are based on co-op and affordable housing. The federal government's about to pour significant resources finally into this area, and we hope, working government to government with the Capital Regional District and the Saanich and the federal and provincial governments, to really make a difference in the full range of housing.
Do you think that interest rates are going to start to pop up a bit too, and how could that affect things?
Well, the mayor of Saanich doesn't have much say on national interest
rates. I'm not saying you have say, but yeah, I mean, it will affect all your planning, won't it? Yeah,
but I would say this. Certainly, it's a cleft stick where houses are going out of range of regular working people. Interest rates going too high will further keep them out of housing. So meanwhile, we've got this massive fiscal responsibility for COVID, etc. It remains to be seen. But your first point was the assessment values. Nobody predicted how fast housing values would go up. That's part of a tsunami, along with climate change and COVID, that we're going to have to deal with over the next few years.
Fred, before I get into my next question, I want to dive a little deeper into an announcement you just made on the show, that being a collaboration between different levels of government into the development of co-op housing. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct. We'd like to reach out to the federal government, and that's something we did in my first term as a councillor. I had a open house and a task force looking at co-op housing. It's time now to look at that again, along with market housing and all other forms of housing. There's no single successful bullet, if you like, in this. We need to be marching forward on all fronts and make ourselves as efficient as a municipality as we can.
Our family had direct experience with co-op housing. We lived in the co-op housing off of Columbine and Camellia, etc. And I tell you, without that co-op housing, there's no way we could have gotten into a house. We've been in our house for 30 years. So I'm very, very pleased to hear that you're looking deeper into that. It's a missing component of the matrix of affordable housing. Well done. But however, my question to you is along the lines of some other initiatives that you've been leading in Saanich. I have been a huge booster and supporter, proponent of better relations with the regional First Nations. So congratulations on signing a memorandum of understanding with the First Nations who live on the peninsula. The Chartlip chief is quoted as saying they're looking forward to productive and difficult discussions ahead. So what will be difficult, and are you optimistic that positive economic agreements can be reached?
Yes. Yes, I'm optimistic. We spent 2 years, and in this milieu, 2 years is lightning fast. We had the most amazing ceremony with the Saanich leadership, where we did a Saanich ceremony of paddling in. As you know, the Saanich people come from the land, and they're the people who, if you like, were saved during flood times by having the ability to use their canoes. So as a symbolic paddling in with 6 paddles, one of those paddles now has pride of place and dominance in our council chamber. But now the agreement is in place, the work really begins. It's to embrace First Nations knowledge, and knowledge keepers and elders in our understandings of the lands. We're working with them with Resilient Saanich, which is to put a foundational document on how we preserve the ecosystems of all lands in Saanich. We'll be consulting with them at every committee level, and it's a case of making sure we take the time to do this well. I'm very optimistic. So the conversations will be difficult at times, but very meaningful at every turn.
So how difficult? I mean, what do you mean by difficult? That's I think what John was really asking is,
Yes.
do you see some contentious issues of things they may want, but the wider community, you may have to bring them to the table to get there?
Correct. The First Nations aspirations have not necessarily been on the front of our agendas in municipalities for a long time. This is about to change, and we need to take time to listen to it. However, Robin, when you listen to the First Nations and see that the caring of the planet, the caring of the ecosystems, the plants, the animals, the seas, the birds, the fowls, is embedded in their language and view of the world, isn't that where we all need to go as we work with a one planet? We only have one planet. How do we look after it for future generations? So within those difficult conversations is a huge treasure of respect of the land and perhaps a better way of treating the assets that we have of nature for future generations.
I agree with all of that, and I applaud that intent. I also know that a lot of First Nations really want to see economic development issues
Well done.
sort of
Absolutely.
work through. They want to
Yep.
see more education for their
Yep,
young people.
absolutely.
And this is going to get us to this next question here, Fred, which is Camosun College out at Interurban. And
Yep.
Camosun College in general has been very proactive in working with the First Nations. Have set up First Nations education programs specifically, have really brought the First Nations in a meaningful way. And this has been very good. So Camosun is something you can sort of show as an example of where the overall community could go in terms of bringing the First Nations in for not just, symbolic reasons, but also real concrete opportunities.
So John and Robin, there's even more. As you know, the South Island Prosperity Partners is something that we championed in Saanich, and we have since the beginning. The South Island Prosperity Partners includes 11 of the municipalities, the academic institutions, Camosun, UVic, etc. But more importantly, all the First Nations engaged in indigenomics, that is to bring economic resources to our First Nations. And we've been working on that for multiple years. And what you're seeing at Camosun is everybody looking to do what they can with First Nations from a First Nations approach to bring them economic opportunities. The same at UVic.
And speaking of Camosun College again, what's happening with the film studio, the film school that's been talked about? I mean, that's an announcement I know you'd love to make.
Yep.
Where are we at with that, Fred?
So a couple of things have happened at Camosun. First of all, great progress has been made. We had $150,000 courtesy of the provincial government and Murray Rankin, Lana Popham, Rob Fleming, who helped us get that monies to do a business case study. That's been completed. It's now in the hands of the committee. I'm on that committee. As you know, the president, Sherry Bell, is now retired. We have an incoming president. He'll be landing shortly, and he's already here. But once we have a chance to brief with him, we'll be making that announcement. It's an expression of interest to go forward with a plan for 3 to 4 sound stages at Camosun with production facilities and academic facilities. Overall cost is some 35-40 million, we think. We've already received 2 million from the province for the road access. Now we're going to be looking for investors who want to take that forward. The land will stay Crown, owned by the college, and there'll be some leasing arrangement. But it's a stepwise process. We could do 1 sound stage, then 2 sound stages, then 3 sound stages. But that's going to be decided by those who wish to take this forward. Within the South Island and going up to Malahat, of course, there's huge potential for the film industry. It's a $3.4 billion industry. As we know, we get a fraction of it here on the island. It's been a big part of my work as mayor to get this happening because it's great economic renewal for all people, including First Nations. There is a First Nations film training program, and this is another aspect of that work.
I don't think we can emphasize enough how important an industry this film industry is to Southern Vancouver Island. Robin and I have, big time Chamber of Commerce pedigree. We go back, hundreds of years with this. Anyway, mid 2000s, I recall advocating to government to change the tax policies to help this industry.
Correct.
And Kathleen Gilbert, chair of the Film Commission, has done an extraordinary job with this. And this studio is just going to propel this industry right into. So good work, Fred. Good, amazing.
John, let me come in on Kathleen Gilbert. She has been amazing. Now imagine you're doing a job and you've got one arm tied behind your back and the other arm tied your back and your knees are cobbled together as well. That's what it's been like for Kathleen. She's tripled the income. It's at some $60-70 million, we believe, coming in, up from 50. But that's in the absence of a film studios. With film studios, the sky is the limit. And these are great green jobs for all kinds of people, from hairdressers, wardrobe people, through to carpenters, electricians, etc., right through to script writers, actors, etc. And there's a huge spillover into hotels, restaurants, etc. John, spot on. Thank you.
Well, then now let's discuss another great positive Saanich story. That's the 100th anniversary of this Cedar Hill golf course. It's the only 18-hole municipal owned course on Vancouver Island. However, Fred, you must be feeling the pressure as land becomes more and more valuable. A lot of municipalities, well, I don't know if a lot, but certainly within Saanich, are debating.
Certainly Vancouver.
Vancouver, okay, right?
Langara.
Debating keeping land aside for golf courses. What's your position on this? Is the maintenance of the Cedar Hill links really in the best interest of the community?
Yes. So I would say this. In my mayor's annual address, I started, of course, with the recognition of our government-to-government relationship with the Saanich Leadership Council. But then there was a series of items showing how we've acquired green space. Green space is the new gold of communities, if you like. It always has been. But we saw during COVID how important green spaces were. We helped acquire the Mountain Road Forest, 50 acres there. Council members are on the CRD. Habitat for Humanity helped purchase that. We raised, in the community, $2.115 million by community interests who for decades have wanted to protect the 6 acres of natural space next to the Jubilee Hospital on Kings Road. We purchased extra lands to add to the Swan Lake Christmas Hill Nature Sanctuary. The idea of giving up green land, which is forested and much of it in natural state, is anathema to this council and would be a disservice to future generations.
That's well said, Fred. And I happen to agree with you. But John, I'm glad you asked that question, because we do hear debates about whether golf is really a good way for people to use land, especially in urban areas. You hear this debate more and more as land gets more and more expensive.
Robin, let me come in. It's not just golf. There's a huge number of trail walkers, bird watchers, and that golf course over 100 years have had the most amazing volunteer group in the Cedar Hill Golf Club. For 70 years, they've been husbanding that area. So it's more than just golf being played. It's much, much more. And I think those who use that space and enjoy its natural beauty understand that.
Well said, Fred. I have another question for you. It's my final question. I think John has another one after this, but this is my last question. And it's not a short question, and I think it's an important one. And it's about the fact that you're running for mayor again and the kind of scrutiny that you receive. I guess you'd receive this scrutiny even if you weren't running again, but as the mayor, you're getting a lot of flack in some ways and a lot of praise in others. Recently, it was announced that Saanich was letting go its chief administrative officer, Paul Thorklinson, who will receive a large severance package. While on the flip side, Saanich also now is greeting a new Saanich Police Chief Constable, that's Dean Duffy, and he's an officer who's risen through the ranks. So that's really great news. And it does seem that you get targeted with the bad news, and maybe you get praised, maybe not because you actually did anything for it, but you get praised for the good news. And especially right now, as we're moving towards an election campaign, that sort of thing is even heightened. So how do you feel about that? Is this all grist for the mill as mayor?
It's all good. It's all good. It's grist for the mill. As you know, let's deal with the second one first. As I'm chair of the police board, and the police board went through an elaborate and thorough process to capture ideas on who should be the next chief. The previous chief was Scott Green. He served with us for 3 years, which was an agreement in place. With the incoming chief, what you can do in a department where you have strong bench strength, and 30 years plus of local knowledge of policing. These are some of the best assets that you can have. So why wouldn't you promote internally if you have the bench strength? If there's some serious problems in the department, and we do see that across Canada, there's maybe a need to bring in an external chief. The other piece we did, which is interesting and will relate to the first question, is incoming Chief Dean Duffy is on a contract, a 4-year term employment agreement. Similar to Chief Green, he was on a 3-year agreement. So that gives the next police board in 4 years' time, if things are going wrong, chance to renew, chance to cancel or renew. But the other important thing, it gives certainty to the ranks within the police, which is a rank-oriented semi-paramilitary organization, certainty about their careers and their promotion opportunities. And I have to let you know, the Saanich Police under Chief Scott Green, and the incoming chief is the employer of choice for police forces across Canada. We have got people across Canada and internationally applying to join the Saanich Police Force because of its enlightened HR policies and organizational excellence. Now let's go back to your first question. Yes, we did part ways with Mr. Fulkerson, and I won't really talk about that so much, but I will tell you this. Having done that, we put in place some really important pieces. First of all, we moved quickly for business continuance by appointing Mr. Brent Rems as our acting CAO. We also announced that we're going to be hiring an interim CAO that will take us from as soon as we hire, which we hope will be February, right through to after the election. And that will be someone who will give us business continuance. And with the CAO, it's interesting. The way to solve the big payouts is term limit contracts. If a contract has no term limit, then you have to pay it out. And that's ubiquitous across all municipalities. And the pay scale of municipalities is what it is, that we are creatures of the province. I have no say in that.
Always great to talk to the mayor of Saanich, Fred Haynes, and lots on his plate. No secret that he's going to be facing a very tough challenge for the mayor's chair. Dean Murdoch has already announced that he's thrown his hat in the ring. He's running. And he is already campaigning a lot on social media. He's a 3-term councillor, has support from fellow councillors who are an NDP bloc. And Fred Haynes certainly has his work cut out for him. But John, now let's go to a few comments, a few interesting comments we're getting from some of our viewers.
Robin, it's such an odd time in the media these days, in the modern media, of which we are a part of that, in that the more difficult comments you get is an indication of your increasing popularity. And we are getting more difficult comments. I can tell you our anti-vaxxer commentary and interviews are certainly generating a lot of action online. Anti-vaxxers don't appreciate it, and they are certainly telling us about it.
Well, they are, John. And, what we've been doing is really encouraging people to get vaccinated, get their booster shots. Let's get past this pandemic. It's incredible the kind of feedback you get on this. But here's a comment. You have got to be kidding. You must be joking. Please, fella, do some research. Have you been living under some rocks? Double vaxxed with boosters, and you can still get it and spread it. Did you know that? Well, thank you for your feedback. We actually did know that because Dr. Bonnie Henry told us that this was the case. She said that we were all going to be exposed to Omicron in one way, shape, or form. What we are saying is if you get vaccinated and you get your booster, your chances of getting really sick go away. You're not going to go to the hospital. You're not going to die. You're not going to have COVID for months and years. It's not going to ruin your health. And I believe that that is the important message there, John. And we did have other viewer mail.
We certainly did. And I will always support being on the side of science. However, one of our other viewers writes, garbage vaccines that still require masks afterwards. Criminally manipulated false positive test results. and a resulting massive fear campaign, outright censorship of rational countervailing views, millions of incomes and careers purposefully destroyed. Government is the virus. To treat them as criminals is the only option. Can you believe this stuff? Well, viewer, as it turns out, 92% of British Columbians over the age of 12 have been double vaccinated. One of the highest COVID vaccine rates in the world. That's what we have in BC. People are doing this because they believe it makes us all safer and gets us to the end of this pandemic faster. We look to government for leadership during a time of crisis, don't we, right? And most people believe we're being well led. So is it perfect? No. Is anybody perfect? No. But it's a million miles, universes away from being criminal behavior.
Absolutely, John. And you know, we're having some fun with these letters, but we do appreciate getting feedback from viewers. And you don't always have to agree with us. We understand that. And we're not trying to mock our viewers, but we are trying to share with you that we understand these issues. We're trying to express them in the best way we can from our perspective. And we're hopefully helping in this dialogue as it moves forward, and hopefully it's moving forward to the end. We'd like to see this whole issue go away. And you know, John, we have a great show coming up next week as I segue to a promo on our next show. Mike Kazanowski is going to be back, and he is going to talk some more about real estate. We've been touching on it on this show about the way the real estate market has just taken off. Huge lineups of people just to get in and see a place. And everybody's asking over price, and it's just terrible for young people who want to get into this market. And Mike Kazanowski, he knows a thing or two about this file.
Doesn't he? And Mike's a great guy. It was a great interview, and the almost perfect guest to tell us about what seems to be an unexplainable real estate market. Now, you know, Robin, we're wrapped up. This is our show. I think there's a ton of information and good stuff to be listening to. A reminder, please, for all of our viewers, including the ones that don't agree with us, how you can like us. Facebook page. We have a Twitter page. There's a LinkedIn page. There's a YouTube page which houses all of our shows since the beginning. We have a website, and we have an Instagram and TikTok platform as well. And with all that being said, I am the upper mayor of Tulip Avenue, also known as the Croatian sensation, and now the court is being dismissed.
Well, Your Royal Highness, thank you for that. I'm that court jester, Robin Adair, and rumble on.